We are live. Welcome. My name is Pablo Lucero, and this YouTube topic it's about thinking differently and manifesting, and what is the connection. So I'm a 47-year-old man, and I live in Costa Rica with my family. Been living here for about 5 or 6 years, and I would say the last 17 years of my life has been thinking different and taking the path of least resistance, which doesn't mean the easiest path, doesn't mean the easiest road. It doesn't mean that I don't work hard. We'll get into that in a little bit. And I grew up in Florida, Miami, and growing up in Miami, I felt like I didn't belong, I didn't fit in, but this is the story of my life. I grew up with this mentality, and largely through my own self development, self analyzation. It's due to the fact that when I was 7 years old, I was deported. My family and I were deported back to Argentina, and when we were deported as a 7-year-old child, getting going into high school, into primary school over there, and being the outsider, I just didn't fit in. So I got used to the fact that I just didn't fit. Now, mind you, the internet wasn't around. There wasn't much information on style, on trends, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this kid that had just discovered in the mid '80s the culture of hip hop, breakdancing, graffiti, emceeing, DJing, and I show up to Argentina, right, 7 years old, with all of this information and with an attitude. So I was quickly put in check by my environment and by the way things were, by that culture. So instantly it was like, okay, I don't belong here, and I didn't know that at the time. But there was a survival instinct that was arising, a defensive um, attitude towards my environment that was also new to me. Um, I generally, for the most part, had a happy childhood. And then fast forward, lived 5 years in Argentina. And then we came back to the United States. We crossed the border, my family and I, only child. We crossed the border through Canada. So we lived a year in Canada. My dad lived a year in Canada, saved up some money with the help of some family. My mom and I flew to Canada, and we lived there for a little less than a year, I believe, and then we walked the border to go to United States. While I was living in, while I was living in Canada, I also felt like I didn't belong. It was Quebec, so I didn't know French. I had only 7 years of experience in English and 7 years of experience in Spanish. So as a 12-year-old, the best language is play and fun, and we figure it out from there. So creativity, it's really where I thrived, and connecting and making friends. Um, so there was another experience where I didn't belong. Fast forward, we made it to the United States. We made it to Miami, where I went to school. Now, uh, living in Argentina for about 5 years, and in Canada for another year. I grew up listening to rock and roll, and some really rock and roll. And then when I moved back to the States, I started listening to some heavy metal and hardcore. So I going to school in Miami, I quickly noticed, 12 years old, and trust me, I'm going somewhere. I'm giving you a little bit of story so that later on everything ties in, and also to be accessible, and so we can all relate. Gives you also a little bit of background on me and who I am, and hopefully this helps you to think differently, to magnetize and really create what is intended for your physiology, for your biology, and for the physics, your energy, what you're creating for yourself. Good coffee. So living in Miami, And there, discovering hardcore, Metallica, Slayer, etc., etc., I quickly noticed that there were pockets of culture in the environment, in the school environment, in the neighborhood. So all of the heavy metal, the rockers hung out in their little clique. And these were predominantly white kids that skated and rode BMX bikes. And then all of the hip hop culture was another clique. And then you had the Mexicans, which was a little bit of a combination of both um, heavy metal and hip hop and their own in their own culture and their own environment. So I quickly saw this racial separation that I was not used to. Um, so I made my way towards the heavy metal kids, and I saw that, all right, that I'm not making friends easily here. So I made my way to the brown kids, where I can relate, right? Color of my skin. But yet I'm a listen to rock. So I was not quite accepted in that environment yet, and and I was truly intimidated by the kids that listen to rap. So what I noticed was just across the board a sense of aggression and some violence and difficulty making friends compared to where I was coming from, which was Argentina. And a lot of it has to do with language. A lot of it has to do with culture, with societal constructs, and a lot of it has to do with growing up, in the early '90s, um, in the United States. So all of this had an influence in my psychology of fitting in, not fitting in, of associating, not associating, and it was all it was all in connection to the traumatic experience of having been deported back to Argentina. So in a ways, subconsciously, and this is the work that I've been doing, the trauma there was uh, in life. This is what my subconscious was telling me. The narrative at some point in my life was, in life, when you are getting things that are nice, that are good for you, will be taken away from you. You are not worthy. You don't deserve it. All because we were deported, right? That's the narrative. That's the story I created in my neurological, in my nervous system, in my subconscious. So when I would come close to something good in life, either I would subconsciously sabotage it or it would just fall apart because I wasn't deserving of it, which in turn is that I'm sabotaging it energetically. It's like, or I would quit. So I would start a lot of things and quit. I would not stick to anything. I would bounce around from relationship to relationship. I would experiment with different drugs and elixirs and musics and cultures. So almost to the point where it became a muscle that I was training to make sure that I don't fit in. So I feel like now growing up, I don't regret anything that I went through, but I feel that there's a gem, there are gems in that, and being a misfit and not fitting in and looking at everything from the outside perspective. And I think that there are pros and cons to that, right? And it's all about the relationship with the ego, with my personality, my character and development, and where I choose to navigate life from this point. Now, this is all through 15 plus years of self-development work, self-realization work, that now things make sense with the evolution of my mind and maturity and consciousness, right? Different practices. But back then, I was just lost and had no idea that I was lost. At least I'm lost now, and I know that I'm lost. So, mm. So how to do things different, how to think different, how to manifest. When I came to a point in my life through serendipity where I saw I saw life through the lens, and that was it. What I mean by that is that I was at one point in my life, I would say in my late teens, early 20s, I saw that there was a lens to life. And I was on this side and there was another side. So there was this idea or this quality of separation between me and the world where I objectively looked at it. It's like I stood behind this veil and I looked at the veil and I looked behind the curtain and I saw that there is construct, there is reality, there is drama, and it's all made up. And it's comical. And there's suffering in the dramatic entanglement of my ego and the world that I relate to, as I relate to it, as I make it up. And there came a point where, I studied law, didn't finish law school. I was in law for about 13 years and I hated that environment. Truly, what I hated was myself in that environment. It wasn't until I fell in love with myself that I was able to finally fall in love with that environment. So now we start to conceptualize and construct thinking different. I remember one day I was on my way to work and I just had it with my life. I was just like, I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of, of being fake. I'm tired of the mask that I'm wearing. And I'm finally ready to express myself, to be myself. So I showed up to work, and on that day, I said, all right, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves. Now, mind you, I'm tatted up pretty much down to my knuckles. And on that day, I rolled up my sleeves and showed up to the law firm. I sat down and I said, I'm not gonna pretend anymore. Meaning that if I'm not busy, I'm not gonna act busy. I'm not gonna pretend anymore, and I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest, authentic, genuine. I'm gonna be myself. There was a sense of rebellion to this act of being myself. And it was all pure ego, a sense of liberation that came from the ego. And I was using my ego in order to liberate my ego. So make sure you take note of that. I was using my ego to liberate my ego, right? The Buddha says, in order to reach enlightenment, use your body, sit and wait, and keep sitting and keep waiting. And in order to do that, we have to use our bodies, our physical, identifiable character, mind, body. So on that day, I rolled up my sleeves. I sat down at my desk in my office, and my colleagues were walking by, and I was reclined, just chilling. Monday morning, 9 a.m., I said, I'm going to relax before I get started, before I open up my emails. I'm not going to rush into it. People were looking at me already with this curiosity, intrigue, and a sense of jealousy, because there was a sense of freedom in that moment for me. I said, two things can happen. I either love who I am being here, and I get fired, or I am disgusted with the lies and I get fired. Or that's the only thing that was crossing my mind. And I was ready to take that chance by rolling up my sleeves. And then I took off my shoes, I remember. So I'm sitting there barefoot, sleeves rolled up, top button untied, open collar, loose tie. And people are wondering what is wrong with me. They would come into my office and ask me, how you doing? Hey, how's it going? How was your weekend? This was a Monday. I said, it was great. Beautiful weekend. And the most amazing drive to work this morning. I was truly happy. And then the conversation around the tattoo started. to unfold. And then the conversation of yoga started to unfold. I had this peace within me. And the reason why the conversation of yoga started to unfold is because I had images that I put up in my office and statues that I brought of yogic traditions. So there was this curiosity: what is this dude up to? But at the same time, this sense of relief that I was emanating, this sense of freedom that was contagious. And that's at the end of the day what we all love. We all love this sense of peace that we all carry. We all love this sense of freedom and unedited versions of ourselves. You ever met someone that it's like they're just like, wow, they're so fun to be around. They're just kind of normal, or they're a little wacky, but they're authentic. They're just being themselves. It's easy to be around them, or even it's awkward, but it's refreshing. So there was all of these mixed judgments and opinions about me and how I was showing up. Meantime, I had all these mixed judgments and opinions about how I was showing up, because I took it as an experiment of identity, my identity, and what happens what does it mean for me to act free? What does it mean to be free? What does it mean to show up in an unedited version of myself without fear of not fitting in? So that was a moment where I truly started to feel a sense of detachment from my ideas of what this environment meant to me and the people in this environment meant to me. And I really began looking at everybody as just this beautiful, innocent, loving baby child, because that's how I was feeling. And that day was the catalyst of eminent change for the rest of my life. It gave me a glimpse of what is possible, because the magnetism of the people in the office and the attraction from a place that was good to exchange and relate from a place that is good to serve only what is good was palpable. So I said, okay, end of the day, research complete. This worked for me. It worked for my job. It worked for my career. It worked for the people that surrounded me in the office. This works. And I said, there's no turning back. So on that day, I went to go get my nose pierced, and I started burning my suits, getting rid of my suits and ties. And just began looking at life from this lens of truth. What that meant to me is from a place that it's not so much responding to the perception of how I'm showing up, but from a place of how am I creating my own perception of myself, and how am I creating my own act of myself in order to get the feedback from the world, in order to recreate a new possibility, a new perspective, rather than being on the other side, on the receiving end, on the victimized side of life, on the receiving life, but rather proactively engaged, leaning in, proactively engaging with life. Now at 18, I began, all these self-development seminars. Later on in my mid-20s, I discovered yoga, and I had already discovered meditation early on in life. All of these concepts, my mid-20s came really to fruition to that moment in my career where I came to peace with myself, and it was a revelation. Truly, I don't like to use the words in relationship to myself as an enlightenment, but there was an illumination of an aspect in my mind that showed me something, and it was direct feedback. That's what I mean by enlightenment. It's like the flashlight turned on within and it shone out, and there was a direct feedback. So much so that the evidence was clear. And I'd never had that before. So at that moment, I had began my yoga teacher training certification. And I said, all right, it's time to change careers. It's time to follow the yogic path and renounce. And also, I'm going to do that by teaching yoga full time. So there's another cool story. I'm actually going to share it. So before how I discovered yoga, now in my mid-20s or so, I remember having a moment, and that moment was right before that Monday, showing up to work, and I'm actually going to keep that story for another time. I'm gonna leave you guys with a little bit of more space, because that's a very special story that I would like to dedicate enough time. Right now, we've been on the live stream for 21 minutes, and I want to dedicate that story of how I came to really discover my essence in expression and relationship to the world, and how I changed my life, and how life changed me, right? So how to think differently, how to manifest. Well, first, we get to consider that we are made up of energy. Now, we've heard this over a trillion times before, right? And what I mean by trillion times, because it's precisely that. We're made up of over trillions, hundreds and trillions of cells, I believe. And now, grasp this for a moment. Imagine 1 billion cells are remaking themselves, right? Cells in friction, remaking themselves. 1 billion cells remaking themselves in 1 second. That's it, so that we can stay alive. This is what we're made of, right? And every cell is a universe, and we're made up of trillions of universes. And every cell is in friction, in motion, consciousness in motion, so that it can relate, be in relationship with each other, to be in formation, whether it's information or information, to get feedback from its relationship to create, to manifest, to materialize your pinky nail, right? Now, this is what we're made of. These cells are moving at a speed, and in which it's creating a frequency, a resonance in time and space, so that it materializes human being, right? And this human being is one big cell, let's say one big system, one big organism that is like skin, brain, eyes, eyebrows, mouth, nose, ears, etc., etc. And it is aware of itself, asking itself, what am I made of? Who am I? In order to expand consciousness, right? Now, we understand that this is what we're made of. Now, imagine the entire rest of the world, the rest of the universe is made of the same thing. And we are relating to it, right? Oscillating in and out, back and forth, up and down, and all many dynamic interrelational ways. And we are creating a reality. We are co-creating a reality together. Now, to think different is to first grasp that this is what I am made of, and then understand that physics, biology, psychology, spirituality, consciousness, I get to question everything. And knowing that when I question everything, I interact with it, I lean into it, I engage with it in order to create a new experience in ether, in time and space, in the here and now. So, what is the quality of this engagement I desire? If I'm going to relate to something, interact with something, have a dialogue, have friction energetically with something, verbally, mentally, I could either go in a frequency that it's going to be positive or in a frequency that is going to be negative. Either way, it's going to take me to the unquestionable next frequential being. What does that mean? To keep things simple, follow along, lean in. What does that mean? Imagine if you decide to have a thought about something that is beautiful. I just looked at my flowers on the table, something that is beautiful. And I was going to say before that, imagine you were to decide to have a positive thought. So I actually thought positive thought, and my eyes went to flowers. Beautiful. So that is it right there. This is the explanation for it. My mind went positive, as I'm going to give an example of it. My eyes were looking for positive. So I created positive in my mind, whatever, positive, whatever. My eyes were looking for examples. My mind is look for examples. My eyes go flowers equals beautiful equals love equals wife, Sarah, awesome, happy home, we're in love. I just thought different, and I created a loving experience for myself that is in connection to a loving relationship with my wife. So now I created a wife that is loving, that loves herself, loves her home, loves her family, loves me, loves her son. Through the expression of flowers, I created a loving husband, a loving father to my son, a loving partner, a loving executive, a loving business owner, a loving collaborator, facilitator, and speaker, all by one thought that led me to flowers. And this is what I'm creating. Now, this is the direct experience. This is the live adaptive inquiry on how we get to what happens when we decide to change our mind, our thoughts. Now, it is said it is more powerful to change our emotions in order to influence our thoughts, our mind. It is equally as powerful to change our thoughts to influence our emotions, because both of these happen. And we don't, sometimes one comes before the other. However, it is more powerful to influence our thoughts and mind, our environment, by changing our emotions. But we really get to believe that. Now, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter where you are in life. I remember when I used to take the bus. I still sometimes take the bus, and I love it. It's fun. It's and I remember what that meant to me. I know from status, economic status. What does it mean to take the bus? And I take the bus now, and it's like, well, what does it mean for me to take the bus? And then the truth of it, the fact is, transportation from point A to point B. Period. What I think about myself is how I feel about myself. If I feel abundant in my heart, if I feel joyful in my heart, then that's going to influence the thought I have about myself as I'm on the bus. So it doesn't matter what you do in life, how you get around in life, what you do for a living. You get to influence your environment by starting with changing your thoughts through changing your physiology, your biology, which is all physics, which is creating a frequency that is sending a signal out to the world that is magnetizing that which is vibrating at that signal, at that frequency, at that energy space, so that it can continue to have a conversation. If I'm having a conversation with my mind that is good about life, because I do this anyways, we all do this. We think. So if I'm thinking something good, I'm having those conversations with myself in my mind, in my own voice, then that is creating a vibration because we are all energy. That energy, that thought process is creating a reality, because if I close my eyes and I think about the thoughts that I'm thinking, I can actually witness them. Versus with my eyes open, I only see the computer screen in front of me. So when we close our eyes, our internal landscape, our consciousness, infinite consciousness really begins to expand. And it's not that it really begins to expand, it's that a part of us shifts in order to acknowledge this that is happening in real time. Me in here is not separate than me out here, and there is a relationship with both. This out here, when I open my eyes, is limited because I don't see the whole picture. An example of that is if you put your hand right in front of your face, really close where all you see is your hand, you may not even see your fingers. And I ask you, what do you see? You're going to see shades of brown, shades of color, and that's it. But if you go a little bit further and ask you, what do you see? You're like, oh, I see a hand. And if you bring it a little bit further, you're like, oh, actually, I see a hand and an arm. And then if you bring it a little bit further, you see a shoulder, you see the walls, you see the doors. And then it's only as far as you can see. Your consciousness with eyes open, interacting with the world that we're creating on the outside, is quite limited. And when we close our eyes, we go within, there are no limitations at first. There may be a sense of it's all dark, it's all black, and then it starts to have more, there's more space. There's more space. And it's not that there's more of space, but there's more awareness of what is within. And all of the ancient teachers have said, in order to understand the external world and how we relate to it, we must go inward. We must go inside. This is why the teachings of silence and meditation, introspection, adaptive inquiry, contemplation are so valuable, are so important. So when we go inside, we get to experience the infinite, because we are made up of cells, trillions of them, each one a universe that is vibrating, oscillating in friction, energy in motion, emotions, having a conversation, a relationship with other cells that are other universes that are creating now new universes. So there's multiverses within just all of us, with not even within or throughout, because there is no separation, but everything here and there and everywhere is in relationship. So this sense of individuality is not true. And you see it with children. Children's get scared when, I remember our son, Kai, when I would look away, he would grab me, and he still kind of does this, because when they see eye to eye, they believe we are one. And when the eyes are turned away, their universes, they feel alone. So now they're scared. They want mommy, they want daddy, they need to be nurtured. So imagine if we still had that. Imagine if we don't have the eye contact from each other, and we have this sense that we are just alone in the world, right? So the sense of separation is false. Now, we've all heard that, some of us in this trend of new age have heard the term, we are all one. So now if I'm energy and I'm vibrating in this frequency, in this time, in this space, and so are you, we are in relationship, because everything between us is made up of the same thing. So our cells are in relationship, are in conversation, and truly we all come from the same space. We are in the same space, and we're going to the same space. So now imagine infecting your emotions with quality in thoughts, quality in feelings, quality in language, and focusing on language that is uplifting, that is supportive, that is constructive, that is possible. Now, it's not about being uber positive, but it's about knowing that you and I are made of this divine source, beautiful creative energy that is constantly in friction, that is constantly magnetizing life onto itself, out, onto itself, into itself, in every sense of the word. And it's constantly recreating itself along with you and I. Imagine if you tell yourself, I'm recreating myself so that I can stay alive right now, and I get to choose how I recreate my heart, physically and emotionally. I get to choose how I recreate my feelings. I get to choose how I recreate my thoughts. Then what is going to be the quality of your thoughts? So now that we understand what we're made of, and we see that we can influence our minds, and we get to, by influencing our minds, we will have feedback from the world. We can ask ourselves, give me feedback. Like the story I shared earlier, I'm going to do this research on myself. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to roll up my sleeve. There's a sense of rebellion. There's ego in that. Absolutely. Now imagine using this ego, this character in the world, to research, to create friction in a good way, from a place that is good to a place that is good, with the intent of only all that is good. So it's an offering of service, it's devotional, and it's for me in the we. Now, this is the invitation. I invite you, just for a day, have one positive thought that you check. And you say, I'm going to focus on this one positive thought, and I am going to succeed at focusing on this one positive thought. And I know I'm going to forget, and I know things are going to get in the way. However, when that happens, that's my cue to my mind and my body to focus on this one positive thought. And when I think positive thought, it's my opportunity and the cue for my body to act out this positive thought. So earlier, the example I gave, think a positive thought. Boom, flowers. Flowers to me equals beauty, love, connection, family, wife, husband, son, union. Boom, 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 boom. The list goes on and on and on. So that's my cue, right? Positive. And it's like, can you start thinking that positive thought and then look for the feedback from the world and focus on it? Say, all right, universe, I'm going to put out this positive thought that goes along with this positive act of energy from my ego, and I'm going to whisper it to the universe. And can you give me feedback? Give me feedback in a way that I can see what this thought and these emotions are doing, are creating. Thank you for listening to me. This is the first YouTube live that I do. And again, my name is Pablo Lucero. I decided to get on to do this live stream because I don't want to spend time creating a video, uploading a video, and then putting it out. So this is unedited. The only thing I thought about was the title. The intention of this is because we all have a gift. We all have talents. And we all have God-given gems that make us unique in the collective union, and in the all and in the one, right? And I'm happy to share more about what unique and individuality, how does that form, right? And I feel that the path of least resistance is to be in surrender. So this is an act for me to surrender what has worked for me, and my psychology, my reasoning around it, my feelings around it, why it's my passion, why it's important to me. And my only duty and responsibility is, and I feel for all of us, is that if we have a gem, it's the only reason we discover it is to give it. We discover our gems and our talents for the sole purpose to offer them. And this is purpose. So this is my YouTube. Please leave a comment if you, whatever, feedback, your feedback. This is me in friction with the world, and I grow through the feedback of this learning. The more I do this, the more I learn. This is the first one. And if you're interested in more information, check out Pablo Lucero, Lucero.io for more things about me and what I do and where I do them and how I do them, right? And again, if this serves you, please share it. And if you want to subscribe, hit the link below and subscribe. And please leave your comment in any shape or form. Everything, all of you is welcome. So thank you and have a good life.